Scientific Advertising by Claude C. Hopkins. Picture yourself strolling down a street in the early 1900s. Everywhere you look, there are advertisements for 5 different beer brands. And they're all screaming the exact same thing: pure. One has bold red letters. Another shows off a fancy illustration. The third? Just the word pure, with a price tag underneath. They blur together into this meaningless background noise. You've seen it 1,000 times, and honestly, you don't believe any of them. But then one day, something different catches your eye. This new advertisement doesn't just shout pure at you, it actually shows you what that means. It's like reading a fascinating detective story. It walks you through the entire brewery. You learn how they drilled wells 4,000 feet deep into the earth, cutting through layers of rock and sand, just to find the purest water imaginable. It tells you about their special yeast cell, the one they finally perfected after conducting 8 different experiments. Every single batch of beer today comes from that same mother cell. The ad describes these massive rooms made entirely of plate glass, where the beer cools in carefully filtered air. And get this, every bottle is steamed clean not once, not twice, but 4 separate times to guarantee it's absolutely sterile before a single drop goes in. After reading all this, imagine you bump into one of the competing brewers. You ask him, "Hey, why don't you tell people about all these amazing steps you take to make your beer pure?" The rival brewer just rolls his eyes. "What? Everyone does that stuff. That's just basic beer making. There's nothing special about it." And right there, you've just witnessed $1 million insight. Actually, make that $1 billion insight. The genius who created that famous ad was a legend named Claude C. Hopkins. His response to that brewer? Sure, everyone does it, but the people don't know it. That single campaign, just by telling the truth in a specific and compelling way, transformed a little-known brewery into one of the most famous brands on the planet. So welcome to Scientific Advertising, my friend. This little book, first published way back in 1923, is basically the foundation of everything. It's the quiet rulebook that giants of industry and marketing have been studying in secret for 100 years. David Ogilvy, one of the most legendary ad men who ever lived, once said something pretty remarkable. Nobody should be allowed to have anything to do with advertising until he has read this book 7 times. 7 times. Let that sink in. Why would he say that? Because Claude C. Hopkins was the person who transformed advertising from a wild gamble into something you could actually measure and predict. He genuinely believed that spending money on an advertisement without knowing for certain that it worked wasn't just wasteful, it was downright foolish. Now, I'll be honest with you, this book is old. The examples talk about shaving cream and automobiles from a century ago. But don't let that fool you for a second. This book might actually be more relevant today than the day it was written. Here's why. The technology has completely changed. We've got TikTok and YouTube instead of newspapers and magazines. But the human being? We haven't changed at all. The core psychology, those secret triggers that make us curious, the things that earn our trust, the reasons we finally decide to take action, all of that is exactly the same. Hopkins was a master of understanding people, and today we're going to unpack his timeless principles together. Here's my promise to you. By the time we're done, you won't just understand what makes a good advertisement. You'll understand the fundamental laws of persuasion, the real science of communication, and how to present your ideas, whether in an email, a presentation, or just a casual conversation, in a way that's clear, compelling, and almost impossible to ignore. Let's dive in. If you had to boil this entire book down to just one concept, here it is. Advertising is salesmanship. That's literally it. It's not art. It's not some form of creative expression. It's definitely not about winning awards or making your friends laugh or proving to your boss how clever you are. According to Hopkins, an advertisement has exactly one purpose: to make a sale. Think about it this way. If a salesman showed up at your door wearing a clown suit, juggling bowling pins, and shouting clever but meaningless slogans. Would you buy from him? Of course not. You might be entertained for a minute, but you definitely wouldn't trust him with your hard-earned money. Yet advertisers do this exact thing all the time. They forget they're salesmen. They try to become entertainers. They chase applause instead of sales. Hopkins demands that we treat every ad like a salesman. We need to measure it purely by the sales it generates. An ad is just a salesman multiplied, one that can speak to thousands or even millions of people at once. And because the cost of that salesman is so incredibly high, sometimes $10 for a single word, it needs to be an absolute super salesman. So if advertising is really salesmanship, how do you become that super salesman? Simple. You don't guess, you test. This is the scientific part of scientific advertising. Before Hopkins came along, advertising was basically throwing darts blindfolded. You'd write an ad you thought was brilliant, spend $100,000 on it, and just pray it worked. Hopkins thought this was absolute madness. He became one of the first to perfect a method of tracking every single dollar. He did this through something called keyed advertising. Here's how it worked. He'd run an ad in one newspaper with a coupon marked Department A in the corner. Then he'd run a different ad in another newspaper with a coupon marked Department B. When people mailed in those coupons, he could count exactly which ad pulled how many responses. But he didn't just track responses. He tracked the cost per response. His entire education came from what he called the University of Mail Order. Mail order was the ultimate teacher because there was zero confusion. You ran an ad, and people either sent you their money or they didn't. The numbers were crystal clear. You knew down to a fraction of a penny what each ad cost you and what it brought in. This is where he learned that assumptions are completely worthless. He tells this amazing story about a guy selling a $5 product. His ad was bringing in responses for 85 cents each, which was nicely profitable. Then a new ad man came in claiming, "I can do way better," and submitted what he thought was a brilliant ad. They tested it. The responses cost $14.20 each. Then a third person submitted an ad. It was simple, plain, and super direct. They tested it. For 2 solid years, that ad brought in responses for an average of just 41 cents each. Think about that for a second. One ad was 34 times more expensive than another, and the only way to discover that difference was through testing. The ad man who just guessed would have destroyed the company. The ad man who tested made it a fortune. This is basically the core of the entire book. Stop guessing. Start testing. So what did all this testing actually teach him? What are these laws of scientific salesmanship? Well, the first major lesson from the mail order school was this: people will read what interests them. We have this popular idea today that people don't read anymore. Their attention spans are supposedly too short. You need to keep everything brief. Hopkins would say that's one of the most expensive mistakes in business. When you're about to spend your hard-earned money on something that matters to you, you want information. If you're genuinely interested in a new car, you'll happily read a 30-page brochure cover to cover. If you're struggling with a health problem, you'll read a 5,000-word article about a solution without even noticing the length. The mail-order advertisers proved this beyond any doubt. Their ads were often packed with tiny type from top to bottom. They had zero room for pretty borders or wasted white space. And they discovered a law that's just as true today. The more you tell, the more you sell. Hopkins shares this great story about the Marmon car. There was this guy considering either a Rolls-Royce or a Pierce Arrow, but their ads were short, dignified, and told him practically nothing, just a name and a fancy picture. The Marmon ad, by contrast, was like a complete story. It went on for columns. It told him everything about the engineering, the quality, the entire experience. He read every single word and bought the Marmon. The lesson? Don't be afraid to tell your complete story. The wrong people will skip right past it, but the right people, your actual potential customers, will genuinely thank you for the detail. Of course, this raises the next big question. How do you get the right person to even start reading your long, detailed story in the first place? The answer is your headline. Hopkins says the purpose of a headline isn't to attract the most people possible, it's to pick out people you can interest. Think of it like this. You're standing in a crowded stadium. You don't just randomly shout, "Hey," you specifically shout, "Hey there, Bill Jones." Your headline is your Bill Jones. It's a filter. If you're selling a business course, your headline shouldn't be a fascinating story. It should be for the man who wants to be a leader. If you're selling a cream for wrinkles, you don't write some clever headline about Egyptian psychology. You write, "Now you can look 10 years younger." The wrong people will skip right past it. But the right people, the ones you actually want, will find it impossible not to keep reading. Hopkins discovered that a simple change in headline could multiply an ad's returns by 5 or even 10 times. He would often spend hours, sometimes entire days, testing and perfecting a single headline. So the headline grabs their attention. Your complete story gives them the argument, but what should that argument actually be? This is where Hopkins shifts from pure science to psychology. And his most important lesson comes in Chapter 3, Offer Service. Here's the fundamental truth of all salesmanship. People are selfish. They genuinely don't care about you. They don't care about your company, your interests, or your profits. They care about themselves and their problems. And yet, just look at most advertising out there. It's completely about the seller. Buy my brand. We're the best. Give me your money. Hopkins calls this a costly mistake. It's an unpopular appeal that pushes people away. The best ads, the ones that truly work, never actually ask anyone to buy. Instead, they're based entirely on service. They offer valuable information people actually want. They offer real advantages. They offer a free sample, a trial period, or a way for customers to prove the claims without any risk whatsoever. People can be coaxed, he writes, but not driven. He gives these beautiful examples. A brushmaker sent out 2,000 salesmen to homes, and they were incredibly successful. Why? They didn't knock on doors saying, "Would you like to buy a brush?" They knocked and said, "I was sent here to give you a brush. I've got a few samples, and I just want you to pick your favorite." The housewife, naturally delighted, would look over the samples to choose her free one, and while doing that, she'd notice 3 or 4 others she wanted. And feeling that natural sense of obligation from receiving a gift, she'd almost always place an order. Another company sold coffee from wagons. The salesman would stop at a house, hand the woman half a pound of coffee and say, "Please accept this package and try it out. I'll swing by in a few days to ask how you liked it." He wasn't selling, he was serving. This principle is completely timeless. It's the 7-day free trial on every app. It's the use it for a week, then decide offer on mattresses. It's the smoke 10 of these cigars, then decide if you want to pay strategy. This approach accomplishes 2 powerful things. First, it demonstrates unshakable confidence in your own product. You're essentially saying, "I don't need to pressure you at all. The product will do the selling itself." Second, it taps into a deep psychological trigger. Hopkins tells this story about a man offered 2 horses. The first seller said, "Try the horse for a week. If you don't like it, come back and get your money." The second seller said, "Try the horse for a week, then come back and pay me." Which horse do you think he bought? The second one, obviously. It was the ultimate demonstration of confidence. This leads us to the next great law: be specific. Hopkins had absolutely zero patience for lazy general claims. He called them, quote, platitudes. Saying best in the world, highest quality, or lowest prices is basically a waste of ink. They're just things people expect a salesman to say. They carry no weight. They sound like obvious lies. But a specific claim, that has enormous power. Someone who makes a specific claim is either telling you the truth or they're telling a very clear, easily provable lie. And since people don't really expect advertisers to be that bold with a lie, they tend to accept specific claims as facts. This is honestly one of the most powerful chapters in the entire book. If you say, "Our prices have been reduced," people yawn and keep scrolling. But if you say, "Our prices have been reduced 25%, suddenly people actually listen. One advertiser was selling clothes with the slogan, "Lowest prices in America." Every single one of his competitors eventually copied him. It became completely meaningless white noise. Following Hopkins's advice, he changed his claim to, "Our net profit is 3%. That one specific, believable claim caused a sensational increase in his business. Hopkins was once hired to advertise a brand new shaving cream in a market completely dominated by old, trusted brands. It seemed like an impossible task. He couldn't just say, "Our soap is better." Nobody would believe that for a second. So he dug deeper. He learned that the makers had tested 130 different formulas before perfecting this one. He didn't say, "Acts fast." He said, "Softens the beard in 1 minute." He didn't say, "Lathers well." He said, "Maintains its creamy fullness for 10 minutes on the face." And he didn't say, "It's the best." He said, "The final result of testing and comparing 130 formulas." Hopkins later wrote, "Perhaps never in advertising has there been a quicker and greater success in an equally difficult field. Specificity sells. Specificity sounds like truth." And this brings us right back to that beer story from the beginning. His competitors were all shouting the vague generality, "Pure." Hopkins used specifics. He told people exactly why it was pure. The 4,000-foot wells, the steam-cleaned bottles 4 times over, the filtered air cooling rooms. He took completely ordinary facts about the business and made them sound extraordinary, simply by being the first person to actually tell the story. This is what a true salesman in print does. He doesn't shout empty words, he explains. He doesn't just boast, he proves. Hopkins was also an absolute master of human nature. He genuinely understood what made people tick. He understood curiosity better than almost anyone. He was once hired to sell puffed wheat and puffed rice. The products were completely failing. They were just breakfast cereals, nothing special. So he dug into the manufacturing process to find something interesting. He started writing headlines like, "Grains puffed to 8 times normal size." And even better, "Foods shot from guns." He explained that 125 million steam explosions happened in every single kernel. Was it true? Absolutely. It was just how they made the stuff. But it tapped into this deep, irresistible human curiosity that made people have to try it. Those products, once total failures, became massive successes just because of that psychological angle. He also knew that cheapness isn't actually a strong appeal. Americans, he observed, are extravagant by nature. They want bargains, sure, but they don't want cheap stuff. They want to feel like they can afford the best. If you treat them like they're poor, they'll actually resent you. He also understood the psychology of the word free. This insight is absolutely brilliant. 2 companies were selling similar food products. Both offered a full-size package to get people to try it. The first advertiser gave his package away completely free. You just had to ask. That campaign utterly failed. He even lost customers he already had. Why? Because he'd cheapened his product. He'd basically told the world it was worth nothing. The second advertiser did something different. He published a coupon in newspapers. That coupon was good at any store for a full-size package, and the maker would personally pay the store the full retail price. That campaign was hugely successful. Think about the psychological difference there. The first guy said, "Here, take this, it's free." The second guy said, "This product is so valuable, I'm going to buy it for you." One cheapened the product completely. The other added immense value and respect to it. This same logic applied to all samples. Hopkins was a huge believer in samples. The product itself, he said, should be its own best salesman. But he was absolutely dead set against what he called promiscuous sampling. Never, ever, just hand out samples randomly on doorsteps or in stores. Why? Because they become like waifs on the doorsteps. Nobody respects them. They're cheapened before they're even tried. Instead, you absolutely must make the person ask for the sample. The person needs to first read your ad, your full, specific story. They need to become genuinely interested. They need to be brought to the point of taking action, filling out a coupon, calling a number, visiting a store, to actually request that sample. When the sample finally arrives, it's not junk mail, it's a welcome guest. The person is in a positive, receptive state of mind. They expect to find the qualities you claimed, and so they almost always do. This process, getting people to raise their hand and ask, is what separates the scientist from the gambler. Finally, Hopkins teaches us about the character of our salesmanship. First, he says, don't be a clown. Sure, you can grab attention by being eccentric or weird, but you'll completely ruin your actual selling prospects. People simply don't patronize clowns. They don't trust their money with fools. In all your advertising, be normal. Be sincere. Be believable. Create a consistent, trustworthy personality for your brand, and stick with it. Second, don't be negative. This is honestly one of the most wonderful chapters in the book. Never, ever attack a competitor. It's not even allowed in the best publications, and it's never good business strategy. It looks unfair, not sporty. The selfish purpose becomes way too obvious. Always appear to be a genuinely good-natured person. Even more importantly, don't focus on the problem. Focus entirely on the solution. Always show the bright, happy, attractive side of things. If you're selling a cure for wrinkles, don't show wrinkled faces. Your customers already know about wrinkles. Show them the beautiful face as it will appear after. If you're advertising toothpaste, don't show ugly, decaying teeth. Show pretty, healthy teeth. If you're advertising a business course, don't show a picture of someone failing. Show a picture of a successful person, a leader. He gives this incredibly powerful piece of advice. Picture what others wish to be, not what they may be now. We're naturally attracted to sunshine, to beauty, to health, and to success. So he says, point the way toward them, not the way out of the opposite. In the end, all of these laws, from offering genuine service to being specific to staying positive, come right back to the first and most important rule. Test everything. You simply cannot guess which headline will work best. You cannot guess which appeal will be most powerful. You cannot guess what people actually want. You absolutely must let the customer decide. Before you launch some massive million-dollar campaign, launch a tiny $5,000 campaign in just a few small towns. Let the actual numbers tell you the truth. Let the cost per reply be your ultimate guide. This, Hopkins explains, is what completely removes the gamble. It's what transforms wild speculation into a safe and conservative business. It's what separates the scientist from the gambler, the professional from the amateur. It's the simple, powerful, and genuinely timeless secret of scientific advertising. When you first pick up this book, it's honestly easy to be a little underwhelmed. It was written 100 years ago. It's pretty short. The language is simple and straightforward. There's not a single mention of the internet, social media, viral marketing, or any tool we think of as modern. And yet, as you actually read it, you start to realize this book is, in many ways, the only thing that really matters. Claude Hopkins gave us a timeless blueprint for one of the most genuinely difficult things in the world, communicating an idea effectively. And the reason it's so timeless is that the technology of advertising changes every single year, but the psychology of human beings, that hasn't changed at all. We're still fundamentally selfish. We still tune out noise automatically. We still only pay real attention to things that serve us personally. We're still driven by curiosity. We're still deeply skeptical of vague, boastful claims. We're still trusting of specific, provable facts. We're still naturally attracted to positivity and success, and we still instinctively turn away from negativity and fear. The biggest idea I hope you take away from this isn't really about advertising at all. It's actually about respect. The entire scientific method that Hopkins perfected is built on a profound respect for the customer. It's about respecting them enough to not just guess what they want, but to actually listen to them. To use tests and real data as a way of letting them tell you what they genuinely need. It's about respecting their intelligence. You don't try to trick them with clever slogans or entertain them with silly gimmicks. You give them the full, complete, specific story and trust them to make a good decision. And most of all, it's about respecting their money. You don't ask them to gamble on you, you remove the risk entirely. You offer a sample. You offer a trial. You offer to buy the first package for them. You put the burden of proof squarely on yourself and your product, which is exactly where it belongs. So how can you, as a young, ambitious person, actually use these ideas today? Here are a few simple ways to start right now. First, for just 1 week, try to become a specific communicator. Catch yourself every single time you use a lazy generality. Instead of telling your parents, "School was fine," tell them, "I learned one specific thing in history today about how Hannibal crossed the Alps with elephants." Instead of telling a friend, "That's a cool idea," tell them, "I like that idea because it solves this specific problem for this specific type of person." Just watch how differently people respond to you. Watch how much more weight your words suddenly carry. Second, find the service angle in everything. The next time you need to persuade someone, to get a job, to propose a project, to get help with something, stop talking about what you want. Completely reframe your entire request around what they get. What service are you offering them? How does your idea genuinely benefit them? You'll find that this simple shift in perspective changes the entire dynamic. And third, run a small test before going all in. Before you fully commit to a big new project, starting a YouTube channel, launching a side hustle, committing to a new field of study, find a way to test it small first. Make one video and see if anyone actually watches. Ask 10 people if they would genuinely buy your product before you spend 6 months building it. Let the real world, not just your hopes and dreams, be your guide. That was Scientific Advertising by Claude C. Hopkins. We've walked through the main halls of his University of Salesmanship today, but I'll be completely honest with you. A summary is like looking at the blueprints of a great building. The real magic happens when you actually walk through the rooms yourself. It's in those quiet moments when a simple sentence or a short story from Hopkins hits you in a way you didn't expect at all. This summary is your map, helping you decide if this journey is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today, this whole idea of salesmanship, of psychology, of testing, has sparked even a tiny light in you, then please grab a copy. Reading it isn't just learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you communicate, how you see the entire world of business, and how you understand people. The link to the book is right there in the description. And if you found this journey valuable, if you feel even just a little bit wiser than you did before, please do me a small favor and hit that like button. And definitely subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next exploration into another one of these powerful books that have built empires and shaped minds. Let's keep growing together.